On Daf 31 of Taanit, we're still talking about things that happened on the 15th of Av, really amazing things that cause us to be such an incredible holiday. And one of them that is listed is really feels pretty difficult to the modern sensibilities. It's talking about how the city of Beitar, there was a huge massacre there, and the Romans didn't even allow people in to bury the bodies. And literally years passed, and they're finally allowed in to bury the bodies. And that happened on Tu B'Av. And when they found the bodies, they found that they weren't fully decomposed to the point they were still able to identify who was who. And this is considered to be like an amazing blessing. Now, from the modern sensibilities, like, okay, but like this is oh, it's a horror. I mean, you're going in there just uh, thousands and thousands of dead bodies and you get to bury them. Okay, that's better than them leaving unburied, but really this is like a horrible thing. Why do we say this is such a great thing? In fact, we have a whole blessing called the Tova Metiv. God is good and does good based on this miracle. These bodies didn't decompose. But for the ancient world, it makes a lot more sense. Let me give a bit of context. So imagine here, you've got this city, you've got the city in the revolt, and you've got this horrible slaughter. We don't really know if everybody was in the city who was fighting there was killed or not. Now, the Romans took a lot of people away as slaves. I don't know if they did from that city or not, but certainly in general, they took a lot of people as slaves from the cities that they conquered. Also, some people might have escaped and run for their lives and fled the whole country. What happens if you don't know if somebody died in that battle or is still alive somewhere? Well, really, you can't move on. If that man who was in there in that battle was married, well, his wife doesn't know, is she now a widow or is her husband still alive but a slave somewhere else? His children can't inherit any of his property or the land. That people can't move on. The blessing of being able to identify, of knowing when your dead pass away and being able to bury them, is to say, okay, yes, it hurts. Yes, we're in a state of mourning, but actually even being able to mourn somebody is a bit of a blessing. And this whole set of parshas we've been reading lately, it's all about how Jacob wasn't able to mourn Joseph for 22 years because he didn't know what happened to his son. He assumed he was dead, but didn't really know for sure. So that whole 22 years, he was distraught. He couldn't move on with his life. He'd lost other people, but he was able to bury them and move on. Like with his wife, Rachel, he was able to bury her, always grieving, but moving on. So this was the great miracle. The great miracle is they were able to get into the city of Beitar. They were able to bury the bodies. They were able to identify them. And people were able to move on to the next stage in their lives.